What is the American dream? The American dream. It is an idealistic yet achievable long-term goal that can be realized in America because of the freedoms and the rugged mystique that this country provides. For many early Americans, the American dream could be summed up with three metaphorical symbols: the city on a hill, the city of gold, and the fountain of youth. The city on a hill referred to the possibility that in America, a community could be founded that was far away and isolated from bad influence or critique, a community belonging only to people of the same values. This symbol came to represent religious freedom. It was for this reason that so many eschewed religious denominations fled to America for sanctuary. The city of gold was a fantastical urban legend that somewhere in America there was a metropolis built out of solid gold. While it may or may not have been taken literally, this symbol came to represent the wealth that could be aspired to by coming to America. Lastly was the whimsical tale of the Fountain of Youth. It was rumored that somewhere in America there was a pond that would grant youth to whoever drank from its waters. It could also be interpreted in a more figurative sense, with America itself being the literal manifestation of the Fountain of Youth, a place in which individuals could start a new life. The concept of the American dream has persisted ever since the first European settlers sailed to the New World, and even today it continues to capture the hearts and imaginations of citizens and immigrants alike. But the American dream is not merely limited to an individual person. The American dream can be shared by an entire group of people. One American dream that was avidly pursued by not just one person, but by many, was that of the Mormons. The Mormons. Now be honest. What comes to mind when you think of the word Mormon? Do images of polygamy pop up? How about the word cult or the word strange? Unfortunately, these stereotypical labels have plagued the Mormon American community since its founding, which has no doubt been perpetuated by ignorance. However, whether or not you like them, the Mormons have carved out their place in America in a way very few communities have. How the Mormons came to be and how they came to thrive is a fascinating story which begins with a man named Joseph Smith. The history of Mormonism. Now imagine you were living in New York in the year 1820. At this time in history, the seeds of the Industrial Revolution were stirring in the North, slavery dominated the South, and Andrew Jackson was president. This was the era in which Joseph Smith lived. Little did he know that at an early age of 14 he would experience something that would turn his whole life around. It was springtime, and one day he was taking a walk in the woods. He had a vision of God and Jesus appear before him, telling him that the church doctrine was wrong and had strayed from the gospel. This visitation from these heavenly figures shook his whole world, but he was only a boy and so kept this divine event to himself. As it were, he subsequently received a second visit, this time from an angel, who told him of a series of written doctrine inscribed on golden plates that he had buried in a hill. Years later, he wrote down these experiences in a journal, and he published it as the Book of Mormon, hoping to spread the word about his visions. Most of the readers of his work dismissed him as blasphemous, but nonetheless, his accounts inspired and touched many people who came to join him as followers. Under Joseph Smith's leadership, the Church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ was established. Under this new religion, he reintroduced polygamy, and he prohibited drugs, alcohol, tea, and coffee. The Mormons were not well received by their New York neighbors, so they were forced to move several times. Joseph Smith has led the Mormons as far as Kirkland, Ohio, and Nauvoo, Illinois, when he was murdered by the non-Mormon locals. But his death was not the end of Mormonism. Stepping up to replace him as leader was one of the more active and outspoken members of the church, Brigham Young. Knowing that the Mormons were neither welcome nor safe in Nauvoo after Joseph Smith's murder, Brigham Young led the Mormons in a treacherous exodus across the desert to what he believed was the Promised Land. After a trek traversing more than a third of the United States, the Mormons arrived and settled in what we call today Utah. Because of the presence of a large lake nearby where they settled, Brigham called their settlement Salt Lake City. From then on, through strife and controversy, the Mormons persevered, and it is due to their struggles that today the Latter-day Saints Church still exists. Who are Mormons? Now that you know the history of Mormons, you're probably still wondering what exactly these people are. One of the best ways to explain Mormonism today to everyday Americans is to compare it to the more commonly practiced religions of Catholicism and Protestantism. After all, this was the main reason why the Mormons were met with so much disdain and violence in their early history. To start off, the Mormons had a very different view regarding the nature of the Trinity. While Catholics and Protestants believe that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all part of one entity, Mormons believe the opposite. Instead, that they believe that these three figures are all very distinctly separate entities. Another controversial belief that Mormons have is the possibility of human beings being able to become gods or goddesses in the afterlife, and that God himself has a bodily form, whereas other Christian denominations deny this. Mormons also differ in their view of the afterlife. They don't believe in hell, but rather that all people receive salvation and go to heaven. In terms of religious texts, while Christians refer to the Bible, Mormons refer to the Bible in addition to their own specific religious text, the Book of Mormon. One of the most common misconceptions about Mormons is that they are all polygamists. While Mormonism may have been founded with polygamy as one of the practices, the followers of the Latter-day Saints Church gave up polygamy in 1890. The polygamist communities you see featured on television these days, often surrounded with controversy and conflict, make up a very small percentage of the practitioners of the Mormon religion. These people call themselves Mormon fundamentalists, which separates them from the everyday non-polygamy practicing Mormon majority. Polygamy, however, was not the only controversy to plague even the modern-day Mormon Church. Due to the influence of prominent figure Brigham Young, African Americans were banned from becoming Mormon priests until as late as 1978. That was only 34 years ago. The religion of Mormonism is also quite demanding of its followers. As mentioned before, Mormons are prohibited from partaking in any kind of drugs and are not allowed to drink tea or coffee. In addition, young Mormons are expected to spend much of their youth acting as a missionary for the church and spreading the word about the religion. Mormons today. The success of Mormons can be defined in many ways. One way that Mormonism can be said to be successful is the enormous increase of its members. Today, the Latter-day Saints Church has as many as 14 million members, with 1.7% of Americans in the United States being Mormons. The Mormons can also be attributed to having a solid presence, in that they are a dominating influence in Salt Lake City and even Utah as a whole. One of the more financially based achievements of the Mormons was their construction of the impressive Mormon Church, the Salt Lake City Church, and the foundation of their own college, Brigham Young University. In regards to the success of individual Mormons, there is an impressive amount of famous and successful Mormons. These include the renowned author of the science fiction book Orson Scott Card, who wrote Ender's Game. There's Stephanie Meyer, the woman behind the best-selling Twilight series. The animator of the movies The Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and The Secret of Nim, Don Bluth. There are actors Katherine Heigl of Grey's Anatomy and John Heder of Napoleon Dynamite. And who can forget this year's Republican candidates, John Huntsman and Mitt Romney. From these examples, it can be said that today the Mormons are experiencing an ever-increasing influx of members. They also have a solid presence in America and can be proud of a notable lineup of figures. Now more than ever, the Mormons have made their mark in America. Did Mormons achieve the American dream? For a long time, and even today, Mormons were considered outcasts. Not unlike the Puritans or the Amish, the Mormons struggled to hold on to their religious beliefs in a world that was not so accepting of them. However, after looking at their history leading up to the present, I believe that Mormons realized all three of the American dreams. The Mormons achieved religious freedom when they founded their own colony in West America, where they could adhere to their beliefs. The Mormons achieved wealth in that, as dictated by their doctrine, they worked exceptionally hard and supported the members of their community, which led them to become financially successful. Lastly, the Mormons achieved rebirth in the early years of Mormonism when followers left their lives behind and embraced the doctrine of Joseph Smith. They effectively started a new life. This was even more true when Brigham Young led the troop of Mormon followers west to found a Mormon community in Utah. With each other's support, they found religious freedom, wealth, and a new life. They were discriminated against, endured violence, and had to travel across North America from the East Coast to the West Coast, and yet with all these hardships, they never gave up. Amidst all this conflict, the Mormons survived and prospered to the point where they are today. They even have their first front-running presidential candidate. To be able to establish a community of their own, to survive oppression, and to prosper. These are the reasons why the Mormons have achieved the American dream.
Came to win, survive.